welcome to Glisten's Culinary Delights. Today I'm going to teach you how to do a staple recipe that you're going to use several times in your kitchen. Today we're going to make some biscuits, and I'm going to actually teach you how to make a honey butter to put on top of those biscuits. There's going to be a little bit of a twist to that honey butter, so stay tuned and see how we do that. But first, let's start off with our biscuits. Okay, so we have all our ingredients set out on the counter here, and I'm going to use our food processor for the first step of the biscuit process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get 4 cups of flour, and I'm going to stick it in the bowl of my food processor. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a teaspoon of baking soda. Next is going to be 2.5 tablespoons of baking powder. And then last of the dry ingredients is a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now you don't have to do the salt if you're using salted butter, but because I'm using unsalted butter, I'm putting in the salt. Alright, so I'm going to put the lid on this and give it a pulse, just to mix all those dry ingredients together. Then I'm going to add my butter. And for the butter, it's 2 full sticks of butter, and I have it cubed into small little cubes. Now that I have the butter in my food processor, we're just going to pulse it until the butter is about in pea-sized shapes mixed in with the flour. Alright, so now that I have the butter all incorporated into my flour, the butter's looking little pea-sized shapes in the flour, I'm going to pour it back into my bowl that I used for the flour, because we're just going to want to gently mix in that buttermilk. Okay, so now that I have it in my bowl, a quick tip for you, if you don't want to use a food processor, you can use one of these pie mixers, and this will just, the serrated blades on here will just break up that butter and make it into that pea-sized shapes that you're looking for. So you can do it that way, or you can do it with the food processor, whichever way works best for you. Okay, so now that I have everything to go, I have all my dry ingredients in here, I have my butter all ground up into little pea-sized shapes. I'm going to use 1.5 cups of buttermilk, and I'm going to put it in my mixture. Now everything is going to have to be cold, so you want to keep it cold. So that butter is going to stay cold. You're going to want to use really cold buttermilk, and I'm just going to use a fork to lightly mix it because you don't want to overwork it. So add that buttermilk and stir that together. Alright, and there you have it. It's going to be all crumbly like this. With it crumbly, that's totally fine. I'm going to get my mat out, and I'm going to roll out the biscuits so I can kind of knead it together on my mat. Okay, so I have my mat, I have my rolling pin, and then I have my biscuit cutter. For a biscuit cutter, you don't have to have your own special biscuit cutters. You can either just do drop biscuits with the spoon, drop a chunk of the dough onto your parchment paper and your cookie sheet and do it that way. Or you can use a cup or whatever you have on hand that's round, basically, and cut it that way. Or you can invest and buy some biscuit cutters if you make biscuits often. But I'm just going to just dump this out. It's all crumbly still. That's all right. And then I'm just going to try to knead this dough together just a little bit. Okay, so now, as I said, you can roll it out. I'm going to do a few different types so that way you can see what the difference is. And I'm also going to show you a tip on how to get your biscuits a little bit flaky. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a chunk out of this, because I'm going to show you what a drop biscuit would look like if you're going to just go that route. Set that aside there. All right. So then I'm going to roll this out So we're going for big, thick biscuits. So I'm gonna just take this biscuit cutter and cut one biscuit out. Okay, and this is just the normal route to do biscuits. Now I'm gonna show you a way if you want them like bigger and flakier. Just gonna put that back together again. Now the trick I've learned is you're gonna do it kind of like you would do a croissant. I'm going to flip it here on this side, flip it there on that side, turn it over, and roll it out again. Get that out of the way. And once you have it rolled out again, I'm going to just do the same thing. Flip it, turn it, and roll it out again. And you're going to do that about 3 times. Flip it, turn it. You can always just put more flour on your rolling pin so that's easier to work with. Okay, I'm going to just do it one more time. Flip it, turn it. This is what's going to get you those layers in your biscuit. All right, so I'm just going to have it, since it's rolled out, I'm just going to cut as close to the edge as possible. Try to get as many biscuits as you can. You still got a little bit of dough, so I'm going to do the same thing again. Try to get as many biscuits out of this dough as I can. So we're all set. So my next step is I'm going to get a cookie sheet lined with parchment paper, and I'm going to put my biscuits on there, and then I'll show you what we'll do next. All right, so I have our biscuits laid out on our baking sheet with parchment paper on top. And the last step is I'm going to use a egg wash, and I'm just going to put it on the top of these biscuits. They're nice and golden brown on the top. I kind of want to experiment with the sizes of the biscuits, so I want to show you what each type looks like. So this is the drop biscuit that I made first. It's just getting a piece of the dough and dropping it on the baking sheet. So we'll see what that one turns out like once it's done baking. And next is just the regular size biscuit that we did. We've also got the size of the large biscuit that I did at the very end. As you can see, that's just the one biscuit with the leftover dough that I did. And then last, I'm going to get 2 of these biscuits, and I'm just going to crunch them together and see what happens. So I got them all lined up. I'm going to put them in the oven. You're going to have your oven preheated to 400 degrees, and they're going to bake for about 15 minutes or until golden brown. Before I stick those in the oven though, I'm going to just show you egg wash. It's just 1 egg and a tablespoon of water, or you can do a tablespoon of butter or buttermilk if you have any leftover buttermilk. And this is just going to help your biscuit brown and look nice and golden on top. So you're going to want to do that to all of your biscuits. All right, they're good to go. I'm going to stick them in the oven for about 15 minutes. We'll do the honey butter, and then I'll show you about 2 minutes before I take them out of the oven. I like to put the honey butter on there so it kind of caramelizes on the top and looks really nice, and it gets kind of crispy. So we'll do that after they bake for about 12 minutes, and then I'll take them out. Okay, so now that my biscuits are in the oven, I'm going to make that honey butter so that way I can take the biscuits out a few minutes before they're done to brush them with the honey butter. So first things first is I got a stick of unsalted butter. As said before with the biscuits, if you don't have unsalted butter, you can use salted. Just don't put the extra salt that I'm going to put in. And then I put it in the microwave, so it's mostly, if you can see with me stirring it, it's mostly melted. In that butter, I'm going to just mix it a little bit. I'm going to put a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there. Again, leave that out if you have salted butter. And then the last thing is kind of a little bit of a twist from just regular honey, is I got this Mike's hot honey. And it is a little spicy and it's so good. So I'm just gonna put that in with my butter mixture. This is about 1/4 cup. You don't have to use hot honey. You can just use regular honey if you don't have it or you don't want it. And then I'm just gonna stir that up. All right, so there you have it. I have it all mixed up really good. When the biscuits are almost done, I'm going to get a brush, just like I did with the egg wash, and I'm just going to brush the tops of those biscuits with this butter. If you don't want to do it that way, then that's totally cool too. You can, instead of melting your butter, I would just have it at room temperature and mix the honey in with like slightly room temperature butter instead. That way you can use it to just put on your biscuit when you're eating it. But I like to put it on top, and then this will solidify as it cools, and you can also use it inside your biscuit if you want to. So okay, so these are almost done. I'm gonna put them in the oven for 1 more minute, but before I do that, I'm gonna brush it with that honey butter. Now, if you are not gonna eat all these biscuits all at once, then I don't suggest that you brush all of them with the honey butter, because you can just store these in the fridge and put more honey butter on them later. So I'm only gonna put it on a few of these. All right, then pop them back in the oven for another minute or so. All right, and so there we have it. These are our biscuits, and so I'm gonna show you what each one looks like, so you know what you like, what you don't like. So this first one right here, this is the drop biscuit that we did. You can see it there. Doesn't really have too much shape, but it looks okay. Let's show you what it looks like on the inside. Still nice and steamy. You got nice fluffy still. Good taste. That's perfect. All right, so this next one is the biscuit that we did after folding the dough. If you can see, it kind of got these little like flaky parts like on the biscuit, and it grew a little bit taller than the one right next to it. So I'll cut that one open. Still pretty good in the middle. Tastes just as good as that one, just a different shape, and it's a little bit taller. Okay, and this last one is the biscuit that we did without the folding of the dough. You can see it's just not as tall as the one that we folded the dough with, but it probably tastes just as good. Got nice little crispy bottom. That's what it looks like on the inside. All in all, they're all good. What really gives these biscuits that extra kick is that honey butter that you're putting on the top of it for that last minute. It gets a little bit crispy on the top, and it tastes so good. Like I said before, you can use some of it just to put on your biscuit and eat it that way too. Whatever works best for you. Thanks for joining me on this video where we made buttermilk biscuits with hot honey butter. I'm so glad to be able to share this recipe with you. If you'd like, you can add additional things to your recipe to make it your own. People can add cheese or green chilies, whatever you would like. I'd love to hear about those experiments that you do in the comments. Also, if you'd like to see any of my videos, please click that alert bell and like and subscribe. Thank you very much.